Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, maybe you were around for 1976. That was the last time America threw a party for itself, and the city of brotherly love was at the heart of the celebration, and will once again for the 250th anniversary. The Morning Light panel will discuss the ways a divided American can find agreement. I hope we can find agreement on what we're actually celebrating, Deborah.
Well, let's certainly hope so. But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. Jeff, you are going to be taking us on a Pennsylvania faith trail.
I'm leaving right now.
Stay with us. Did you know Marian Anderson, once acclaimed as the world's greatest voice, was a proud Philadelphia native? Her faith was tested throughout every chapter of her life. Find out how the faith of her mother helped her pave her own beliefs and guided her career to the Lincoln Memorial and the world's greatest stages.
I think this is one of the biggest, most significant underreported biographies in American history.
Anxious to hear it.
Well, we're less than a year away from marking America's 250th birthday. It's the mega celebration of the founding of this land that we love. There's even an 18-letter word for it. Let me see if I can get this right. Semi-quincentennial. And with events like the World Cup and the PGA Championship and March Madness all happening here in Pennsylvania, the spotlight on the Keystone States makes this the epicenter for telling the story of America. But what exactly will the story be, and who's in charge of telling that story?
And that's certainly a good question. American schools once made civics a priority, but no longer do. According to the Heritage Foundation, a century ago, civics education was inseparable from the teaching of personal responsibility and virtues. Today, some states do not have any civics requirements. Others do not require students to earn passing scores on civics assessments to graduate. So how do we really close this gap?
Do you think it's because history teachers, not all of them, but some of them, are making history boring, not a story?
Well, that could be the case.
Did you like your history? Never mind. A few years ago, a survey from the American Historical Association found nearly 70% of Americans don't see history as a story. Instead, they view history like a quiz, recalling names and dates and facts. So how do we tell the story of our country? Nearly 250 years of great and not so great moments. We turn to our Morning Light panel for a little insight today. Jeff Wakeen, Luke Covert, and Dr. Dan Spanjer. What an honor to have you guys back.
Thanks, brother.
Nice to be here. I'm going to start with the movie maker today.
Okay.
You make movies.
Sure.
You see things the way that most of us don't. And you certainly, I'm sure, I haven't asked you, but don't see history as dates.
Right.
And just facts. How do you transform a story and say, well, we're marking a milestone, America's turning another year older this year, and make it exciting for a generation that's not been following this story?
Yeah, the moment that I started to love history was when the teacher stopped making me remember dates and facts and let me do it as a story. So I totally agree with that. I honestly think from a movie perspective, from a story perspective, we're facing the biography problem with telling the story of America. If you think of it like a person, there's a problem with biographical movies, which is that they try and tell the birth, the adolescence, the young man, the old man, all the way to death, and they just kind of do this like surface level thing where they just kind of hit the greatest hits versus like there were two Steve Jobs movies that came out.
Right.
One of them did that, and then the better one, in my opinion, focused on the day of this huge unveiling of like the iPhone. And it was like the 48 hours, and that was the whole movie. And that movie was killer. And the other movie was just like forgettable, in my opinion. Right. No offense to whoever made that. But so I don't know. I honestly don't know how you tell the history of a 250-year-old country without just skimming, sort of cherry picking the greatest hits, and that's not a good, you know.
Jeff, you and I have had a conversation, several conversations about American history, because at some point in your life, you turned to the story and said, I had no idea, and you started going almost chapter by chapter, figuring out what was missing before, and what did you discover about America that makes this place so extraordinary?
I think just knowing that, you know, history just keeps repeating itself, right? I mean, even all through the Bible, right? It just keeps repeating itself. And this idea that we have this right to freedom and to pursue our dreams. If you look all the way back through history, there's pursuit after pursuit after pursuit of people's, organizations, individuals dreams. And this is where it happens. And this is where the rest of the world envies that, wants to become a part of that, wants to get into it. And I think that's when it really turned for me to look inside and go, wow, I could wake up one morning, which I did. Well, I've woken up actually many mornings for 64 years. But
you just revealed your age. You're much younger than America.
But, you know, went into my basement and said, I think I'll start a business. You know, I think I'll pursue a dream. And I think that's what's just actually great. I think that's the fabric of this country.
All right, I want to take what Jeff is saying, and I want to talk to you, Dr. Spanjer, about when you have this idea that Governor Shapiro is talking about. This is about freedom. Let freedom ring. But the founders had a vision of freedom which wasn't just chase whatever dream comes into your mind. There was a different level of responsibility. Where did the spiritual piece fold in on top of America's story?
Yeah, that's good. Big freedom in the modern sense is really much more about individual liberty and doing what you want. I think in the colonial period and in that era when the republic was being developed, virtue was really the goal of freedom. In other words, freedom was the opportunity to do what's right. If I hold a gun to your head...
Freedom was the opportunity to do
virtue.
What's right.
Right. So if I hold a gun to your head and I say, don't lie, I can get you not to lie, but are you actually becoming a good person? And this is the way they saw Europe. Like, Europe has all these rules and patterns in society, but then they have a lot of force to make it done. We're not getting a good populace. You're getting obedience. But what's really unique here is that we don't do that. We educate you, and you need to vote. You need to make the decisions. But we need to train you so that you make virtuous decisions. But the minute I remove freedom, I've just got an obedient person. That's kind of why we're always nervous around Catholics in this country. Because Catholics, right, they're obeying the Pope, right? They're just going to do what they're told. But, you know, that's not good enough. You need to develop virtue in yourself. And so for Jefferson and Winthrop and a lot of the founders going back, it's always been freedom is the only framework in which virtue actually develops.
And to be fair to our Catholic viewers, I mean
I know it's true, but I'm saying that's the way we view it.
The impression is that at least somebody tells me or somebody gives me the rules, and then I'll stay within those rules. Right. And what we're finding out, right, is the story of Pennsylvania really is about the individual making right decisions. So how do you tell this story of the individual person? We've now had millions of people come through Pennsylvania, live here, work here, die here. The governor, the historical commissions, the Pennsylvania, the PA 250, they can pick which story to tell.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that the story includes space for the divine and the supernatural, and it's not just a collection of dates?
I mean, to me, the big problem is that I don't think people have a license to like America. Like, I almost think the problem isn't like, what do you say so they celebrate it? It's more like, how do you bridge the gap? Because both sides feel like they don't have a license to like America or something. And maybe this isn't the right answer, but it's like, the people on the left are like, you need to admit the flaws, and then I can like it. And people on the right are like, you need to admit the victories, and then I can admit a few flaws or something. So it's like,
that's interesting.
So it's like, I don't know what to do with spiritual. Like, I think the spiritual thread through it has to be stronger, because you can just argue the facts back and forth. But I would almost say spiritual, even bigger than like Christian churches, the spiritual journey of like the country is like the deeper, true journey of the country, and you got to figure out how to tell that
I mean, you really
story.
said something profound here, which is that the conservatives really have a particular way that history needs to be presented, and progressives really say, you're right, before we get to celebrate and cut the cake, you have to say sorry, right? And that creates a great deal of tension. How about this idea that the thread from before 1776, William Penn forward, has this almost like what Luke is saying, this spiritual thread that connects that man with what we're doing today? That's an incredible story. I know you've spent some time looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, again, it's a repeat of history, right? The story tends to run. It begins, it's got a middle, it ends, and then it repeats itself. It just has different clothing on it, different people, different characters, it's different cast. And I think that we have to pay attention to that, because we can tend to repeat the mistakes as well in history. I like to say that our past is a great informer of our present that guides us for our future.
So maybe that's where you bridge the gap. It's almost like admitting the mistakes and the flaws allow us to have an honest conversation, but it doesn't mean that you don't throw a party.
Yeah, you don't look in the rearview mirror, and condemn yourself for it. You're referencing past, you're referencing history to inform yourself, to inform your present so that you can move forward into your future.
I'm going to ask you to kind of put the ribbon on all of this today. President Trump is talking about building this garden of heroes with a couple hundred statues and Tiger Woods and Elvis next to John Adams, and it's interesting. But I think the serious question is, though, what goes in and what goes out of history, and can you have a Pennsylvania 250 celebration and take out the spiritual narrative and just say, can you just leave the religion out and just put the facts on the table and let us decide how we individually will celebrate? How do you put it all together?
Yeah, no, you can't. There's no such thing as facts, parafacts. Facts always belong to larger explanations and stories, right? And all the facts that led to the founding of the Republic are intimately woven with a religious construct, a religious consciousness, what's right, how are we serving God. We didn't do it right. We made a lot of mistakes, and I think that's what you're all getting at. We have to admit those errors. We have to understand that there are mistakes we can remake again. But the point is that we only did this because we believe certain things. And the interesting thing is you don't have other Americas in the world. Why? Because they didn't go through that same experience. They didn't say, we need this basic, rough religious idea to create a republic that's going to go on and create these kind of freedoms.
And in closing, what is the big idea of America?
The big, one sentence, the big idea in America is that individual freedom and responsibility will create a virtuous republic and allow progress to happen.
Beautiful, well expressed. Gentlemen, thank you. A perfect way to end this conversation.
Thanks, Jeff.
Grateful for you.
Appreciate it.
Well, she was a groundbreaking American opera singer and civil rights icon. We're going to travel to Philly for a Pennsylvania faith trail on the life of singer Marian Anderson. You're watching Morning Light on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Marian Anderson's historic concert at the Lincoln Memorial in 1939 was in so many ways the voice of freedom for millions. But it is her Christian faith which is the often forgotten piece of this Philadelphia native story.
So I traveled to the Marian Anderson Museum and Historical Society for a visit with the one person entrusted with this great Pennsylvania's faith trail. At 762 South Martin Street in Philadelphia, Jillian Patricia Pirtle maintains the modest home of one of America's most celebrated voices, Marian Anderson. The museum in a diverse working-class neighborhood, a tribute to a life of faith and humble achievement.
Nothing about Marian Anderson can connect and make sense without her faith, because it was her faith, as Marian Anderson said, that sustained her through every aspect of her life. It was her faith in Jesus Christ that brought her to understand the love of music as she did at 6 years old. It was the faith that she had in the Lord and the love of the church that aided and assisted her in that dream that she had of wanting to sing and wanting to get an education in music.
Before Marian Anderson became the first African American to perform at the Metropolitan Opera, long before her Lincoln Memorial Concert and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, before she was proclaimed the greatest voice in 100 years, Marian Anderson, facing early criticism, was ready to quit singing altogether. A praying mother battled on her knees.
Marian Anderson had a concert at Town Hall, which she was billed to have such a great moment of triumph, and Marian Anderson worked so hard for that concert. But there were so many negative critics that wrote about Marian Anderson, that spoke about what she wore to the concert, how she stood, how she used her accents for language while singing, and all of those things which were completely unfounded and unfair. And when Marian Anderson stood wanting for an answer from God as to why, when she worked so hard and tried so hard and how it could be so devastating for her, she wanted to give in. But it was that sense of love and parenting, of faith that her mother taught her. And her mother didn't push her. Her mother knew the sensitive heart that her daughter had and of spirit, and she slowly but steadily reminded Marian Anderson of who she was, of the fact that she was God's child, and He gave her such an amazing gift, and that when she was ready, slowly it would be reintroduced to her, and she would use it for His glory and His honor, and that He would bless her. And He certainly did, over and over again, despite the hardships, despite the trials and tribulations. Her faith grew stronger. Even when Marian Anderson was denied the right to have her dream fulfilled because she was a Black person in America. Even when Marian went through the harsh realities of the Jim Crow era, it was her faith that kept her grounded, that allowed her to know that there would always be another way, that if the Lord had given her the talent and ability, there would be another way to make sure that it was realized.
Anderson would write, "The faith my mother taught me is a foundation. It is the only ground on which I stand. With it, I have freedom in life I could not have any other way. Whatever is in my voice, my faith has put it there."
And in those dark moments, those deep moments, when she might have forgotten that through faith, it was her mother's strong faith that reeled her back in and grounded her to that for which she taught her from the Lord's Prayer on. And Marian Anderson kept that because she often said, "That faith which is of my mother's is mine."
In her uncertain moments, Anderson recalled her mother quietly pointing her back to God. "Have you prayed, Marian? Have you prayed?"
And that faith allowed her to be blessed, but also be a blessing to others, because Marian Anderson realized that the only way that you truly get blessed is when you're a blessing to others. And then that in turn, God blesses you. And she used that motto all of her life.
In 1952, Anderson shared the wisdom of her mother. Prayer begins where human capacity ends. It's a belief which defined her life and extraordinary career. Well, the story continues to inspire a generation of classically trained performers like Jillian, and Philadelphia has so many important sites connected to Anderson's faith journey. We promise we're going to go back to share some of them in the future.
Well, it really just shows the importance of parenting and praying for your children. I mean, that was certainly a wonderful example. That beautiful little home which Jillian and her little team of volunteers protects and stewards is in the middle of a neighborhood that grew up diversity, working class. But what Jillian is doing is reminding people that this wasn't just a hard work, good luck story. This was God through the power of a praying mother. And that's what resonated with me. Yeah, absolutely. Well, coming up next on Morning Light, despite her success, Marian Anderson faced a wall of racial discrimination. Denied access to the world's biggest stage, she responded with forgiveness and grace. It's a decision that helped Anderson break barriers and launch her to the front of the civil rights movement. She was the highest paid African-American performer of her time. Marian Anderson sang for presidential inaugurals and graced all the prestigious concert stages of Europe. But when the Daughters of the American Revolution said she couldn't sing at Constitution Hall in Washington, D.C., she resisted criticizing them. She didn't complain, but she did accept an invitation to a slightly larger venue. This is a bit of that backstory. The world remembers Marian Anderson, denied the chance to sing at America's premier concert venue, Constitution Hall, because of her race. Sponsors and supporters like First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt arranged a different venue, the Lincoln Memorial, for an historic public concert.
The nation's most impressive Easter demonstration. 75,000 massed before Lincoln Memorial to hear Marian Anderson, colored contralto, make her capital debut at the great Emancipator Shrine.
She didn't fight for a page in history, but on Easter Sunday, 1939, history found her. The audience, 75,000 on the National Mall, millions more on radio, hearing a voice first heard at age 6 at Philadelphia's Union Baptist Church.
And so it is fitting that Marian Anderson should raise her voice in tribute to the noble Lincoln, whom mankind will ever honor.
Anderson historian Jillian Patritle says it was Anderson's Christian faith which gave her the power to forgive and the courage to sing.
When Marian Anderson was approached with this, she didn't even realize or know that she could do it. She questioned herself. She questioned whether she had the strength or ability to do such a momentous historic thing that had never happened before in our country's history, with the first open outdoor concert event experience. But Marian Anderson said something that far too many of us don't do when we're faced with such a situation. She took self out of it. She took her feelings, her anxieties out of it. And she realized in her soul and in her mind and in her heart that that moment wasn't about her feelings, or it wasn't about her. It was a transcending moment, she said, where she was a symbol, a voice of her people. She would go out and she would sing to the mark of the situation, to inform the world about the plight of her people and about the right for equality, the right to be able to manifest the dreams that God has given you in a duly public space. And when she said she looked at it like that, it took the weight off a substantial amount. She still had nerves and jitters when she descended those stairs at the historic Lincoln Memorial. But when she closed her eyes and she took a breath and she swallowed and she looked up, then she looked out and she began to sing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, to thee we sing." Her faith got her through not only that moment, but the ability to see clearly that the gift that she was given wasn't just her own. It was given from God and to be used for the greater good of helping others. She wasn't just another young, successful artist. She was truly a voice of the people. We the people.
24 years later, organizers of the March on Washington asked her to return to the historic steps to sing the national anthem. But traffic and crowds forced a providential program change. Her new selection, a Negro spiritual proclaiming God's strength in weakness.
In his hands he's got you and me, sister. In his hands he's got you and me, brother. In his hands he's got the whole world in his hands. Oh,
Marian Anderson sang what she experienced and believed. He's got you and me in his hands. It is a life that I can't imagine happening without the kind of pressure that racism and the challenges of growing up, father dying young, so many other factors in her life that led her to that moment. Yeah.
Well, certainly a beautiful voice.
It's when you see her voice, you remember the Lincoln Memorial event. But what I think Jillian helped me see is that it was at every juncture in her life when she was forced to depend on God for the strength to get through it. From that moment in 1939 on Easter Sunday all the way through the civil rights movement, and then she lives into the 1990s.
Wow.
As a dignified, gracious ambassador. And by the way, she went back to Constitution Hall and at their invitation and performed beautifully. Never a criticism of the Daughters of the American Revolution who snubbed her because of her race.
Wow, what a wonderful faith journey.
Indeed, indeed it is. And thank you to Jillian and her beautiful site there.
Stay with us. We are back right after the break. Welcome back. Coming up Monday on Morning Light, learn about the mission of the Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry. Plus, hear how they spread the gospel on land and over the airwaves. And that's a look at what's coming up Monday on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts, and have a wonderful weekend.
Deborah, you have a wonderful weekend, too. Well, by every standard, Tom Brady is a winner in football, maybe even the greatest of his generation. But he's also positioned himself as something of an expert in business and broadcasting and health and now apparently parenting. This week, he typed out a response to another great athlete, golfer Scottie Scheffler. He's been winning a lot, too. Now, Scottie, a little different approach. He ranks his priorities as a relationship with God first, then being a husband, and then a father. Golf, he says, is a distant second.
If my golf ever started affecting my home life or it ever affected the relationship I have with my wife or with my son, that's going to be the last day that I play out here for a living.
Did you hear what he said? When golf becomes more important than his relationship with his wife and his children and God, he's out. For his part, Mr. Brady says being a dad, yes, it made the list, but says take care of yourself first. Take care of your physical health, your emotional health, your mental health. Put yourself first. Now, that might sound okay, but the Jesus that humble golfer says he follows has a very different message. Seek you first, the kingdom of God. All these things will be added unto you. Jesus, others, you. Now, that's the key to real joy. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thank you for spending the week with us. Go check on your neighbors, and we'll look for you back here Monday morning.